believe in Muhammad as the apostle of Allah. I believe in brotherhood of all men. But I don't believe in brotherhood with anybody who's not ready to practice brotherhood with our people. I don't believe in brotherhood.
That's not gonna work. We can go back to James because he was on it.
How terrible their lives may be, and their lives have been quite terrible. And no matter how far they fall, no matter what disaster overtakes them, they have one enormous knowledge and consolation, which is like a heavenly revelation. At least they are not black. Now I suggest that of all the terrible things that can happen to a human being, that is one of the worst. I suggest that what has happened to white Southerners is in some ways, after all, much worse than what has happened to Negroes there. Because Sheriff Clark in Selma, Alabama, cannot be considered, no one can be dismissed as a total monster. I'm sure he loves his wife, his children. I'm sure that, he likes to get drunk. He's, after all, one's got to assume, and he is visibly a man like me. But he doesn't know what drives him to use the club, to menace with the gun, and to use the cattle prod. Something awful must have happened to a human being to be able to put a cattle prod against a woman's breast, for example. What happens to the woman is gaslit. What happens to the man who does it is in some ways much, much worse. This is being done, after all, not 100 years ago, but in 1965, in a country which is blessed with what we call prosperity, a word we won't examine too closely, with a certain kind of social coherence, which calls itself a civilized nation and which espouses the notion of the freedom of the world. And it is perfectly true from the point of view now simply of an American Negro. Any American Negro watching this, no matter where he is, from the vantage point of Harlem, which is another terrible place, has to say to himself, in spite of what the government says we can't do anything about it. But those are white people being murdered in Mississippi work farms, being carried off to jail. Those are white children running up and down the streets. The government would find some way of doing something about it. We have a civil rights bill now. We had an amendment, the 15th Amendment, nearly 100 years ago. I hate to sound again like an Old Testament prophet, but if the amendment was not honored then, I don't have any reason for believing the civil rights bill will be honored now. And after all, one's been there since before, a lot of other people got there. If one has got to prove one's title to the land, isn't 400 years enough? 400 years, at least 3 wars. The American soil is full of the corpses of my ancestors. Why is my freedom or my citizenship or my right to live there, how is it conceivably a question now? And I suggest further that in the same way, the moral life of Alabama sheriffs and poor Alabama ladies, white ladies, their moral lives have been destroyed by the plague called color, that the American sense of reality has been corrupted by it. At the risk of sounding excessive, what I always felt when I finally left the country, found myself abroad in other places, and watched Americans abroad. And these are my countrymen. And I do care about them. And even if I didn't, there is something between us. We have the same shorthand. I know, when I look at a girl or a boy from Tennessee, where they came from in Tennessee, and what that means. No Englishman knows that, no Frenchman, no one in the world knows that except another black man who comes from the same place. One watches these lonely people denying the only kin they have. We talk about integration in America as though it was some great new conundrum. The problem in America is that we've been integrated for a very long time. put me next to any African, and you will see what I mean. And my grandmother was not a rapist. What we are not facing is the results of what we've done. What one begs the American people to do for all our sakes is simply to accept our history. I was there not only as a slave, but also as a concubine. One knows the power, after all, which can be used against another person if you've got absolute power over that person. It seemed to me when I watched Americans in Europe that what they didn't know about Europeans was what they didn't know about me. They weren't trying, for example, to be nasty to the French girl or rude to the French waiter. They didn't know they hurt their feelings. They didn't have any sense that this particular woman, this particular man, though they spoke another language and had different manners and ways, was a human being. And they walked over them with the same kind of bland ignorance, condescension, charming and cheerful, with which they'd always patted me on the head and called me shy, and were upset when I was upset. What is relevant about this is that whereas 40 years ago when I was born, the question of having to deal with what is unspoken by the subjugated, what is never said to the master, of ever having to deal with this reality was a very remote possibility. It was in no one's mind. When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. Everyone else seemed to agree. If you walk out of Harlem, ride out of Harlem, downtown, the world agrees. What you see is much bigger, cleaner, whiter, richer, safer than where you are. They collect the garbage. People obviously can pay their life insurance. The children look happy, safe. You're not. And you go back home. And it would seem then, of course, that it's an act of God, that this is true, that you belong where white people have put you. It is only since the Second World War that there's been a counter-image in the world. And that image not come about through any legislation on the part of any American government, but through the fact that Africa was suddenly on the stage of the world, and Africans had to be dealt with in a way they'd never been dealt with before. This gave an American Negro, for the first time, a sense of himself beyond a savage or a clown. It has created, and will create, a great many conundrums. One of the great things that the white world does not know, but I think I do know, is that black people are just like everybody else. One has used the myth of Negro and the myth of color to pretend and to assume that you are dealing essentially with something exotic, bizarre, and practically, according to human laws, unknown. Alas, that is not true. We are also mercenaries, dictators, murderers, liars. We are human too. What is crucial here is that unless we can manage to establish some kind of dialogue between those people whom I pretend have paid for the American dream and those other people who have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble. I want to say at the end, at the last, is that that is what concerns me most. We are sitting in this room, and we are all, at least we like to think we are, relatively civilized, and we can talk to each other at least on certain levels, so that we could walk out of here assuming that the measure of our enlightenment, or at least our politeness, has some effect on the world. It may not. I remember what is dangerous here is the turning away from anything any white American says. The reason for the political hesitation and in spite of the Johnson landslide is the one has been betrayed by American politicians for so long. And I'm a grown man, and perhaps I can be reasoned with. I certainly hope I can be. But I don't know, and neither does Martin Luther King. None of us know how to deal with those other people whom the white world has so long ignored, who don't believe anything the white world says and don't entirely believe anything I or Martin say. And one can't blame them. You watch what has happened to them in less than 20 years. It seems to me that the city of New York, for example, this is my last point, which has had Negroes in it for a very long time. If the city of New York were able, as it has indeed been able, in the last 15 years to reconstruct itself, tear down buildings and raise great new ones, downtown and for money, and has done nothing whatever except build housing projects in the ghetto for the Negroes. And of course the Negroes hate it. Presently the property does indeed deteriorate because the children cannot bear it. They want to get out of the ghetto. If the American pretensions were based on more solid, a more honest assessment of life and of themselves, it would not mean for Negroes, when someone says urban renewal, that Negroes simply are going to be thrown out into the streets, which is what it does mean now. This is not an act of God. We're dealing with a society made and ruled by men. If the American Negro had not been present in America, I am convinced that the history of the American labor movement would be much more edifying than it is.
Tremendously moving moment now. The whole of the Union standing and applauding this magnificent speech of James Baldwin. Never seen this happen before in the Union in all the years that I have known it. Baldwin smiling, obviously delighted by his reception, tremendously moved by it.
But is y'all gonna give us the American dream? Is y'all gonna make it happen? Hell no. It ain't. Well put, nigga.
I am now very grateful and very pleased to be able to call on Mr. William F. Buckley, Jr. to speak forth to this motion.
Now we have Mr. William Buckley, who will need all his skill to establish ascendancy over his audience, which has clearly been so deeply moved.
Thank you, Mr.
by the
President.
eloquence and
Baldwin.
personal experience of the preceding speaker.
Take our Mr. Gentlemen. It seems to me that of all the indictments Mr. Baldwin has made of America, here tonight and in his copious literature of protest, the one that is most striking involves, in effect, the refusal of the American community to treat him other than as a Negro. The American community has refused to do this. The American community, almost everywhere he goes, treats him with the kind of unction, the kind of satisfaction at posturing carefully for his flagellations of our civilization, that indeed, quite properly, commands the contempt which he so eloquently showers upon us. It is impossible, in my judgment, to deal with the indictment of Mr. Baldwin unless one is prepared to deal with him as a white man. Unless one is prepared to say to him, the fact that your skin is black is utterly irrelevant to the arguments that you raise. The fact that you sit here, as is your rhetorical device, and lay the entire weight of the Negro ordeal on your own shoulders is irrelevant to the argument that we are here to discuss. The gravamen of Mr. Baldwin's charges against America are not so much that our civilization has failed him and his people, that our ideals are insufficient, but that we have no ideals, that our ideals rather are some sort of a superficial coating which we come up with at any given moment in order to justify whatever commercial and noxious experiment we are engaged in. Thus, Mr. Baldwin can write his book, The Fire Next Time, in which he threatens America. He didn't, in writing that book, speak with the British accents that he used exclusively tonight, in which he threatened America with the necessity for us to jettison our entire civilization. The only thing that the white man has that the Negro should want, he said, is power. And he is treated from coast to coast in the United States with a kind of
Buckley doesn't choose to give way the interrupter, Master, and he has done. The interrupter is now set down.
Goes beyond anything that was ever expected from the most servile Negro creature by a Southern family. I propose to pay him the honor this night of saying to him, Mr. Baldwin, I am going to speak to you without any reference whatever to those surrounding protections which you are used to in virtue of the fact that you are a Negro. And here we need to ask the question, what in fact shall we do about it, Mr. President? What shall we in America try to do, for instance, to eliminate those psychic humiliations which I join Mr. Baldwin in believing are the very worst aspects of this discrimination? You found it a source of considerable mirth to laugh away the statistics of my colleague, Mr. Burford. I don't think they are insignificant. They are certainly not insignificant in a world which attaches a considerable importance to material progress. It is, in fact, the case that seven-tenths of the white income of the United States is equal to the income that is made by the average Negro. I don't think this is an irrelevant statistic, ladies and gentlemen. It takes a capitalization of $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 per job in the United States. This is a capitalization that was not created exclusively as a result of Negro travail. My great-grandparents worked too. Presumably yours worked also. I don't know of anything that has ever been created without the expense of something. All of you who hope for a diploma here are going to do that at the expense of a considerable amount of effort. And I would thank you, please not to belie the fact that a considerable amount of effort went into the production of a system which grants a greater degree of material well-being to the American Negro than that. Did
he just say slavery was a great amount of production? Our blood, sweat, and tears of immigrants and black people and minorities? He said we put in a great amount of production. White people think they produced us, Jay.
Is enjoyed by 95% of the other peoples of the human race. But even so, to the extent that your withering laughter suggested here that you found this a contemptible observation, I agree. I don't think it matters that there are 35 millionaires among the Negro community. If there were 20 million millionaires among the Negro community of the United States, I would still agree with you that we have a dastardly situation. But I'm asking you not to make politics as the crow flies, to use the fleeted phrase of Professor Oakeshott, but rather to consider what, in fact, is it that we Americans ought to do? What are your instructions that I'm to take back to the United States, my friend? I want to know what it is that we should do, and especially I want to know whether it is time, in fact, to abandon the American dream as it has been defined by Mr. Hickok, Mr. Burford. What, in fact, is it that we ought to do, for instance, to avoid due humiliations mentioned by Mr. Baldwin as being a part of his own experience during his lifetime. At the age of 12, you will find on reading his book, he trespassed outside the ghetto of Harlem and was taken by the scruff of the neck by a policeman on 42nd Street and Madison Avenue and said, "Here, you nigger, go back to where you belong."
Did he say you niggas?
15, 20 years later, he goes in and asks to the United States, my friend. I want to know what it is that we should do, and especially I want to know whether it is time, in fact, to abandon the American dream as it has been defined by Mr. Hickok, Mr. Burford. What, in fact, is it that we ought to do, for instance, to avoid due humiliations mentioned by Mr. Baldwin as being a part of his own experience during his lifetime. At the age of 12, you will find on reading his book, he trespassed outside the ghetto of Harlem and was taken by the scruff of the neck by a policeman on 42nd Street and Madison Avenue and said, "Here, you nigger, go back to where you belong."
Damn, he said it.
15, 20 years later, he goes in and asks for a Scotch whiskey at the airport at Chicago and is told by the white barman that he is obviously underage and under the circumstances cannot be served. I know from your faces that you share with me the feeling of compassion and the feeling of outrage that this kind of thing should have happened. What in...
They think this shit funny. They're not hearing you. I don't like his delivery, though. He too devil advocate-ish. Or is he trying to troll? Is he trolling? Like, what the fuck? What is this? This ain't the regular feed, facts. This is the regular feed. This is the vertical feed. This is the regular feed. Vertical, regular, vertical, regular. Fuck them vertical niggas. Properties. You can't even... Shit, just ass, bro. Anyway. I've been letting this shit play way too long. Wow, 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 wow. Say Drake. Okay. Y'all hear the lightning and the thunder chat? It's about to get crazy. Too loud. Okay? Starving, man. You ain't feeding the nigga today? What's today, huh? What's today? Another day. You know what? You uncultured. Do you want like a fish sandwich? I can't say that. No, you can't. No, you can't. You don't want to freestyle? You want to do something? Same thing. That's the same thing. Eating a part of pizza? Talking shit. You ain't giving up no booty. Right, so anyway. She ain't giving up no booty, but I'm not supposed to eat up all the pizza. You gonna bring the pizza to me? And my headphones? On the couch? You gonna be on the camera? No, you not. Your arm is. Yes, she is. I get it. Beat your ass and have the Bible of God watch. You getting swifty in here, chat. What the fuck, bro? This camera really pissing me off. It's like it wasn't doing this ever. It was never doing this bullshit. And now all of a sudden, it can't do nothing right. It just can't. For some fucking reason. Like, I'm so pissed. I'm so pissed. It's so annoying. What the fuck, bro? What is that? And why is it there? Because then I hit this, it's gone. And then I hit this, it's back. It's gone. Then I hit it. Motherfucker's back, right? Full effect. Nah, now it's gone. Now it want to hide from me. Bitch ass shit. Give me my pizza, man. It's too hot. You trying to kill me? I still gotta talk. You just throwing them braids around. You just want to move them. You ain't even have to move. She want to toss her hair, y'all. She whip her hair back and forth. She, what's her name? Willow. Nah, bro. Fuck that. Fuck that. I said fuck them niggas. I don't give a fuck about the vertical niggas no more. We on YouTube with it. I need to get back to the map of the damn stream, niggas. That's what I'm talking about. White man just said nigga to me. Really hurt me. Really feel like I was called a nigga just now. Yeah, paper towel, napkin, something. Come on, man. No hospitality around this bitch. Y'all know what I'm saying? L Hospitality, Center. L Productions, Center. That's L me. I'm production. I'm production around this bitch. That's L me. Nah, bro, I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. I understand everything they saying in this video, but I don't think the chat give a fuck. That's just reality. James Baldwin held it down, though. I don't know what would have happened if he lost his shit in there. Snapped on that nigga. Hundreds of white people in there, bro.
In fact, are we going to do to this policeman? And what, in fact, are we going to do to this barman? How are we going to avoid the kind of humiliations that are perpetually visited on members of a minority race. Obviously, the first element is concern. We've got to care that it happens. We have got to do what we can to change the warp and woof of moral thought in society in such fashion as to try to make it happen less and less. Let me urge this point to you, which I can do with authority, my friends, the only thing that I can tonight. And that is to tell you that in the United States, there is a concern for the Negro problem. Now, if you get up to me and say, if you get up to me and say, well, now, is there the kind of concern that we students of Cambridge would show if the problem were our own? All I can say is I don't know. It may very well be that there has been some sort of a sunburst of moral enlightenment that has hit this community, so as to make it predictable that if you were the governors of the United States, the situation would change overnight. I'm prepared to grant this as a form of courtesy, Mr. President. But meanwhile, I am saying to you that the engines of concern in the United States are working. The presence of Mr. Baldwin here tonight is...
Moral of the story, chat. Baldwin was the boss. He outsmarted them niggas in that room. The room full of people trying to play him. Y'all hear the thunder, nigga. Respect to a legend, though. Respect to a legend. Lose my shit, chat. I'm finna crash out. The tech not working. Granted, we in test mode for a motherfucking reason, but come on, bruh. Come on, chat. Tired of this shit, bro. Tired of this shit, dog. I'm fucking tired. Tired of this shit, man. Finna snap, bruh. Ah! Ah! Fucking pissed.
Well, let's talk about you. Do you feel like you get your props as a mogul, man?
I don't care. The choice between going corporate and independent is just based on, you know, what you consider quality of living. So, like, if you're not a person that minds being told what to do and, you know, sacrificing and, you know, just looking forward to Fridays and, you know, having to ask every time you want to make a move and it has to be profitable, then corporate might be the way for you. If you don't like being told what to do and you like to be able to do things as you're inspired and, you know, where you can show taste and, you know, where, you know, you have the ability to monetize without compromise and you have the ability to be fair with the people you work with and create whatever environment you want, then you're independent and you put up the money, you know. In corporate's model, because usually there is no one person that puts up the money, is usually volume with no margin. So like off $100 million worth of volume and everyone getting paid and salaries and offices being built and, you know, all kind of expense, credit cards and whatever, you don't own nothing, but you're living good. But at the end of the day, off $100 million, you might make $2. If you're independent, off $100 million, you're gonna make about 35, 40. But it's just hard to get to that $100 million because the more demand you have, the more cash you gotta lay out. You know, and that's usually the gift and the curse of being independent, but being successful. The more demand you have, the more cash you have to buy to supply the demand.
He ain't lied. Where to lie at, chap? He ain't lied.
And you don't make money back until you've bought. You have to be out of pocket, you know. And then sometimes you might buy something and buy goods and put it on the street. And
let's learn about Damn Dad Show. I'm trying to hum it out, chat. I'm about to crash out. Cause what I pay for this shit for it to not work?
The trunk of a white Lexus pops open next to Gray's Papaya, a famous hot dog store on 6th Avenue and 8th Street in Manhattan, and for a second it looks like a drug deal. It isn't. It's a record sale, one of the only ways he could get his music into people's hands. Inside, cassette tapes, shrink-wrapped, stacked like ammunition. No record label logo, no distributor, no radio push. Just a rapper named Jay-Z, a couple of buddies, a car, and a hustle after being turned down by major labels in New York City. He doesn't wait for the industry to let him in. He builds another way in. By day, he's driving up and down the East Coast, college campuses, mom and pop record stores, anywhere someone might hand over cash for a tape nobody else was selling. By night, he was back in the studio, recording an album that the labels who passed on him will regret skipping out on. The beginning wasn't glamorous. Before the chains, the champagne, the wealth, the whole operation fit in a trunk. The industry's rejection wasn't just an obstacle. It became a blueprint. Because what got built at the back of that trunk didn't just launch an album, it launched a model. One where artists could own the machine instead of just working inside it. A model that would become the foundation.
It ain't birthed that. I mean, that was the model. I mean, I guess it did birth it, I guess. But that's the model. That's the way to do it. I mean, the right way to do it. There was always the option to sign away. He tried to... This nigga's stupid. The nigga doing this video is stupid. Because how the fuck he gonna say the nigga tried to sign to a record label first, got turned down, and then did this? So he's saying it's like he's some fucking genius. Nigga, he wanted to fucking sell out first. The fuck you talking about? He wasn't betting on himself. He wasn't independent. That wasn't how he was thinking. He had to think like that.
Foundation of Roc-A-Fella Records. DJ Clark Kent had heard something. a producer who worked also as an A&R consultant for Atlanta Records. He brought a young Brooklyn's rapper's music to the label's table, convinced he'd found the next voice of New York hip-hop. Atlantic passed, Columbia passed too. By the mid-90s...
So... who's this guy?
A&R consultant for Atlanta Records. He brought it... DJ Clark Kent had heard...
Oh, Clark Kent.
Heard something. A producer who worked also as an A&R consultant for Atlanta Records. He brought a young Brooklyn's rapper's music to the label's table, convinced he'd...
Did this nigga put an S on Brooklyn? This nigga said a young Brooklyn's rapper. This nigga said Brooklyn's.
Found the next voice of New York hip-hop. Atlantic passed, Columbia passed too. By the mid-90s, Sean Carter, also known as Jay-Z, had done the circuit. Freestyle features, a stint touring with Big Daddy Kane. He had built a reputation among people who already knew hip-hop. He hadn't built one among the people who signed the checks. The reasons cited over the years point to mismatch more than dismissal. A voice and a subject matter that didn't fit the lane labels were investing in during the stretch of the mid.
So what was it about Jay-Z's music that nobody liked at first? Huh? What was it about Jay-Z's music that everybody kept saying no? We're gonna figure it out, chat. What was it about Jay-Z's music that everybody didn't like at first? What were they turning down?
90s. Whether it was the content of his lyrics or simply the crowded field, the labels weren't convinced. 90s. Whether it was the content of his lyrics or simply the crowded field, the
crowded field? Who was out at that time? Was it an oversaturation in music like it is now? What was the field like? Who was out at that time? Who was he competing with? And why it didn't sound like it? Was he not woke enough for the was it conscious rap era? Let me see. He said he was 26, which labels considered too old for a debut act. Damn. In the 90s, 26 was too old for a debut act. And his original rapid-fire tongue-twisting flow felt like an unorthodox gimmick that they couldn't market. So he pivoted. He pivoted to a laid-back, conversational street delivery. Okay, that makes sense why he sounds how he sounds now. His demo tape was strictly street and lacked a clear, popular R&B track, smash, whatever. I have this on my phone. We've heard a few of them. You want to know what's crazy? This is the Jay-Z I would listen to. I would not listen to none of this light nigga. Like, I fuck with that song, but come on. That's so much. I could have bought this place in Dumbo before it was Dumbo for like $8 million. That same place, that very same building, it's worth $8 million. How I'm feeling. I'm like, I don't know. That's not the same. That's not the same as I don't even know what he said, but he's spitting already. Like, hold up. I see why the labels passed, though. You hear it? They're like, this is not going to work. That's not going to work, buddy. We're not having that. I am a little harder. They like, all right. The wicked, in the world.
Hey yo, this is the J Love exclusive.
What did this have last week? Come on, Jay. Would this Jay-Z work? Come on, why the labels say this is ass? Yo, the whole album, he doing the thing, he doing it not, he doing it not. Delivery need, my delivery. You not with it? Come on, Jay. It sound like his name, Jigga. Come on. You gotta have autism. Fuck with that. I fucks with it. This nigga said, I don't even want to give credit when credit is due. Damn. But then you just told us to get credit earlier. Was he thinking about buying property back then? Yo, I love this beat too.
But I shrugged them off like who cares what they say. They was getting jelly and I was getting paid. Wasn't afraid to chase though, wasn't afraid to catch a case. So as long as the pace flowed, warnings I took them like
this is supposed to be the greatest rapper. Like,
with some cash and hey ho, I wrote ladies love die, niggas couldn't stand me, but they wouldn't bring the noise, cause I got boys that got bugged by just like boys. So bro, it's ought to give it a second thought for your course speed and external, internal. Fuck him, he's bleeding and his. You can't stop me is my slogan. I got the best defense under no false pretense. Even in broken English, this shit makes sense.
okay. So we see what he's
saying. The trunk
saying.
of a white Lexus and sell the tapes one at a time. The industry built one among the people who signed the checks. The reasons cited over the years point to mismatch more than dismissal. A voice and a subject matter that didn't fit the lane labels were investing in during the stretch of the mid-90s. Whether it was the content of his lyrics or simply the crowded field, the labels weren't convinced this particular.
It makes perfect sense why his ass was on the back burner. You gonna have to wait, buddy. All of that. A nigga
rapper was the next signing worth betting on. He later described the pattern bluntly, label after label telling him the same thing, you're not the guy. There was one thread that almost held. A short-lived deal with Payday Records produced early singles, but
who owned Payday Records? Who owned Payday Records?
disagreements over the arrangement eventually pushed Carter away from the label. That decision is easy to romanticize now. At the time, it wasn't a bold entrepreneurial pivot. It was a rapper with no label, no
now he's admitting it.
Deal and no guaranteed path, betting on himself because nobody else would. That bet needed a name and an office, and two people who believed the math would eventually work. He already knew exactly who to call.
So he was selling drugs back then?
No promotional run, no street.
Hold on. This the nigga who was selling cocaine? He was moving bricks. Pitching rocks, you know what I'm saying? Whipping work. Bagging it up. Selling it to the fiends. Oh, this was real. So he was selling drugs back then, right? That's what I'm thinking, right? Around the demo tape, he's selling bricks. He's moving all this weight. When was he the mafia boss? When was he the Scarface of this shit? I thought he was a coke connoisseur. I thought he was the king, the cocaine. What's it called? The Pope, the cocaine. What's it called? Cocaine cowboy. Cocaine. What's it called? What's it called when they like to when they call him the top drug dealer? Ain't he the top drug dealer rapper? He drug dealed in both these clothes. I wonder if he was selling drugs back then.
Team paid plaster posters through Brooklyn and beyond. There was a car, 3 men, and a trunk full of product. The math was brutally
Kingpin. That's the word I'm looking for, huh? He wasn't no global cartel boss. He was just highly successful, a mid-level hustler who built the lucrative out-of-state pipeline. Okay, moving weight from Brooklyn to Trenton, Maryland, and Virginia. He made serious street money enough to bankroll Roc-A-Fella Records when the industry shut him out. But he wasn't running a multinational empire. While his peers were rapping about surviving shootouts on the block, Jay was rapping about the drug game like a CEO. He was talking about wholesale logistics, calculating profit margins, and drinking Cristal in an executive suite. First of all, if it's widely known that this nigga was selling drugs, how did he not get caught? And second of all, how much money is enough to bankroll Roc-A-Fella at that time? Like, how much money did it take to even start this? How much money we actually talking about, especially in today's terms with inflation, etc.? Like, how much money would that be today? Because it probably took $2,000, and now we acting like this nigga is the fucking goat of coke.
Simple. Every tape they sold themselves was one more sale without a middleman taking a cut. Every cassette and CD sold outside Gray's Papaya on a college campus or in a mom-and-pop record store on some overlooked block put money directly back into the hustle that existed to make it. Roc-A-Fella. Before it had an office, before it had a logo, before it was much more back into the hustle that existed to make it. Roc-A-Fella. Before it had an office, before it had a logo, before it was much more than 3 names and a handshake. Dame Dash became the chief relationship builder, working record store owners, radio DJs, and anyone with a foothold in a market the major labels weren't watching closely enough to notice someone else moving in. Biggs Burke kept the operation moving, the inventory, the numbers, the unglamorous math of how many units moved and where. And Jay-Z was the product and the pitch, behind the wheel as often as he was behind the mic. This wasn't a metaphor for hustle, it was the actual business model. Every sale did more than move another tape. It financed the next batch, press the tapes, load the trunk, drive to wherever buyers were, blast their music as loud as they could, and sell the tapes one at a time. The industry had a term for what labels tried to do with new artists: break them. Nobody was gonna break Jay-Z into anything, so the 3 of them built the market out themselves, one trunk, one street corner, one open car door at a time. By the time major labels started paying attention, there were already sales figures they couldn't ignore. Numbers moving unit by unit, outside the system that was supposed to decide which record succeeded. 3 names, 1 company, no consensus on the exact date it became official. Depending on which account you read, it was either 1994, 95, or 96. What's not disputed is what it was named. Roc-A-Fella, a deliberate echo of Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest family names in American history, borrowed by 3 men from Brooklyn and Harlem with no capital, no distributor, and no guarantee the name would outlast the first pressing run. It wasn't a joke, it was a thesis statement, the kind of audacity that only makes sense in retrospect, once it works. The trunk sales had proven something the labels hadn't believed. There was demand. What they didn't have was the infrastructure to meet it at scale, pressing plants, retail relationships beyond what they could work by hand. demand, a way to get product into stores that weren't mom and pop. So they went looking for a distributor, not a label willing to sign them. The difference mattered more than it sounds. Most artists spent years trying to get signed. Roc-A-Fella was trying to stay unsigned for as long as they could without limiting its reach. They didn't need someone to discover Jay-Z anymore. They needed someone to move boxes. That was an unusual position for an unsigned rap act. Most artists need a label to create demand. Roc-A-Fella had already created demand. Now it needed infrastructure. A traditional record deal would have meant giving up ownership or long-term control of the masters, the actual asset, in exchange for someone else fronting the money. For Roc-A-Fella, a distribution deal meant someone else handled getting the records into stores while the company kept its independence and its masters. It wasn't complete independence. Distribution still meant relying on someone else's network, but it preserved the one thing Dash, Burke, and Carter increasingly understood was worth protecting: ownership. Priority Records agreed to distribute Reasonable Doubt. For a company that had started with a trunk full of tapes, it was the first time the business had access to National Pipeline instead of a backseat of a Lexus. It wasn't a random bet. Priority had built a reputation that decade working with independent rap labels, and would soon become known for another landmark partnership with Master P's No Limit Records. Roc-A-Fella wasn't the only outsider betting that ownership was worth more than an advance. It was one of several proving the model could work. June 25, 1996, Reasonable Doubt hit shelves. The album three men had bet a company's existence on. It sold roughly 43 times. The industry had a term for more than 3 names and a handshake. Dame Dash became the chief relationship builder who signed the checks. The reasons cited over the years point to mismatch more than dismissal. A voice and a subject matter that didn't fit the lane labels were investing in during the stretch of the mid-90s. Whether it was the content of his lyrics or simply the crowded field, the labels weren't convinced this particular rap.
Rapping about selling drugs is legally considered artistic expression without physical evidence to see stashed financial ledgers or informant taking a stand. A prosecutor cannot indict someone based on that album. Out-of-state expansion. He wasn't doing hand-to-hands on hot corners in Brooklyn. He moved his operation to Trenton. But yeah, he got out before his luck ran dry. He had admitted to surviving a shootout, close range, and there were police raids and stashed houses where he just happened to be absent. He cashed out and went fully legitimate before the feds could piece together a conspiracy case. Initially, it took a small $30,000 singles advance from Payday Records, but quickly realized they needed to control their own product and stacked it with their own illicit money to go completely independent. That's crazy. The launch of Reasonable Doubt meant carrying the entire financial weight of the label, paying premium producers like DJ Premier and Sky Beats, clearing high-profile samples, booking hours of professional studio time, pressing thousands of physical CDs and vinyl records to sell out of their trunks. Okay, I hear you. Funded independent music videos, which Jay-Z noted they capped at $20,000 a piece at the time. The estimated startup capital was around $250,000 in liquid cash, between $100,000 to $250,000. The money today would be $500,000, so $500,000. That's how much drugs Jay-Z sold. He sold up to $500,000 worth. He got away with it.
Rapper was the next signing worth betting on. He later described the pattern bluntly. Label after label.
He wasn't Pablo Escobar, but generating $500,000 in untraceable cash in your early 20s requires moving real weight, not just selling dime bags on the block. He gets the title because he successfully executed the ultimate street fantasy. He washed his illicit money, funded his own corporate exit, owned his masters, and built a billion-dollar empire without ending up dead or in a federal penitentiary. Yet.
the same thing, but not the guy. There was one thread that almost hit. A short-lived deal with Payday Records produced early singles, but disagreements over their arrangement eventually pushed Carter away from the label. That decision is easy to romanticize now. At the time, it wasn't a bold entrepreneurial pivot. It was a rapper with no label, no deal, and no guaranteed path, betting on himself because nobody else would. That bet needed a name, and an office, and two people who believed the math would eventually work. He already knew exactly who to call. There wasn't a marketing budget, no promotional run, no street team paid plaster posters through Brooklyn and beyond. There was a car, 3 men, and a trunk full of product. The math was brutally simple. Every tape they sold themselves was one more sale without a middleman taking a cut. Every cassette and CD sold outside Gray's Papaya on a college campus or in a mom and pop record store on some overlooked block put money directly back into the hustle that existed to make it. Roc-A-Fella. Before it had an office.
I'm about to fucking crash out, Jay. I'm about to fucking crash out, bro. I'm trying not to let it get to me because I had a good stream yesterday with this bullshit. But why is it happening? Is my question. Because I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. You shouldn't do that. It shouldn't. It just shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't. It shouldn't be happening. It just shouldn't be happening. Yet it is. Ah! Bro, it's really pissing me off. This wavy shit will not go away. I don't know what to do about it. I'm trying to just keep streaming. I'm about to crash out and break my whole desktop.
Before it had a logo, before it was much more than 3 names and a handshake. Dame Dash became the chief relationship builder, working record store owners, radio DJs, and anyone with a foothold in a market the major labels weren't watching closely enough to notice someone else moving in. Biggs Burke kept the operation moving, the inventory, the numbers, the unglamorous math of how many units moved and where, and Jay-Z was the product and the pitch, behind the wheel as often as he was behind the mic. This wasn't a metaphor for hustle, it was the actual business model. Every sale did more than move another tape. It financed the next batch, press the tapes, load the trunk, drive to wherever buyers were, blast their music as loud as they could, and sell the tapes one at a time. The industry had a term for what labels tried to do with new artists: break them.
Look at that baldy. Bald nigga, bald nigga, bald nigga.
Nobody was going to break Jay-Z into anything, so the 3 of them built the market out themselves, one trunk, one street corner, one open car door at a time. By the time major labels started paying attention, there were already sales figures they couldn't ignore. Numbers moving unit by unit, outside the system that was supposed to decide which record succeeded. 3 names, 1 company, no consensus on the exact date it became official. Depending on which account you read, it was either 1994, 95, or 96. What's not disputed is what it was named: Roc-A-Fella, a deliberate echo of Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest family names in American history, borrowed by 3 men from Brooklyn and Harlem with no capital, no distributor, and no guarantee the name would outlast the first pressing run. It wasn't a joke, it was a thesis statement, the kind of audacity that only makes sense in retrospect, once it works. The trunk sales had proven something the labels hadn't believed. There was demand. What they didn't have was the infrastructure to meet it at scale, pressing plants, retail relationships beyond what they could work by hand. A way to get product into stores that weren't mom and pop. So they went looking for a distributor, not a label willing to sign them. The difference mattered more than it sounds. Most artists spent years trying to get signed. Roc-A-Fella was trying to stay unsigned for as long as they could without limiting its reach. They didn't need someone to discover Jay-Z anymore. They needed someone to move boxes. That was an unusual position for an unsigned rap act. Most artists need a label to create demand. Roc-A-Fella had already created demand. Now it needed infrastructure. A traditional record deal would have meant giving up ownership or long-term control of the masters, the actual asset, in exchange for someone else fronting the money. For Roc-A-Fella, a distribution deal meant someone else handled the getting the records into stores, while the company kept its independence, and its masters. It wasn't complete independence. Distribution still meant relying on someone else's network, but it preserved the one thing Dash, Burke, and Carter increasingly understood was worth protecting: Ownership. Priority Records agreed to distribute Reasonable Doubt. For a company that had started with a trunk full of tapes, it was the first time the business had access to National Pipeline instead of a backseat of a Lexus. It wasn't a random bet. Priority had built a reputation that decade working with independent rap labels, and would soon become known for another landmark partnership with Master P's No Limit Records. Roc-A-Fella wasn't the only outsider betting that ownership was worth more than an advance. It was one of several proving the model could work. June 25th, 1996, Reasonable Doubt hit shelves. The album 3 Men Had Bet a Company's existence on. It sold roughly 43,000 copies in its first week, enough to land at number 23 on the Billboard 200. Not enough to make anyone in the industry stop what they were doing. Context matters here. That same year, Tupac's All Eyes on Me sold more than 500,000 copies in its first week. Jay-Z's debut would take years to reach platinum. It wouldn't be certified platinum until 2002, 6 years after it dropped, but the first week numbers don't measure what critics were hearing. The production credits alone read like a rap pedigree. DJ Premier, Clark Kent, Ski, and the guest list included the notorious B.I.G., already one of the defining voices in New York hip-hop, in the same New York scene that had passed on Jay-Z entirely. Reasonable Doubt wasn't competing with Biggie. It was standing beside him on the same record, signaling that the respect inside hip-hop had arrived before the commercial success did. The commercial payoff was slow. The critical respect wasn't. Its stories were quieter than many of its contemporaries, less about spectacle than calculation, consequence, and survival. Word moved through the culture the way that word had always moved for Roc-A-Fella, not through radio and not through a marketing budget, but person to person, the same way the tapes had moved out of that trunk. It's tempting to say the industry finally recognized what it had missed. That's not quite accurate. What actually happened is less dramatic and more instructive. An album with modest first week numbers slowly became one of the most influential debuts in hip-hop history, not because a gatekeeper
but because of these nuts, chap. Not because of that, but because of these. You feel so serious over here, don't you? She feel like be serious on my street. She feel like I be serious. You think I be serious? I be too serious? I be too serious on the stream? Shut your black ass up. Shut your black ass up, cuz. Now, many people would know your ass is white. I mean, it's black. Now, if this shit get wavy, it's gonna get crazy when it's... You get wavy again, it's getting crazy again. Trust. Trust. Trust me, chat. It's good to go down. It's good to go down. You have to get him to the hospital. I'm just letting you know, chat. I'm gonna have to go to the fucking hospital, bro. They're gonna have to admit me.
Changed their mind, but because the audience never needed permission to decide for itself. Quick interruption. According to YouTube at the time I'm editing this video, 128.5% of the watch time on my Def Jam documentary came from people who aren't subscribed. I have absolutely no idea how that's possible, but if you're one of those people, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe. I post a new documentary every Thursday at 2 p.m. And if you enjoy stories about businesses and empires behind music, fashion, and culture, you'll probably like what's coming next. Alright, back to the story. By the late 90s, Roc-A-Fella was becoming more than a record label. It was becoming an ecosystem, and the trunk sale instinct hadn't disappeared, it had just scaled. But scaling had a cost. In June 1997, Def Jam acquired a 50% stake in Roc-A-Fella, shifting distribution from Priority to Def Jam in the process. It wasn't a desperate move. The label was already generating real revenue, but it was the first time the company they built from a trunk no longer belonged entirely to them. In exchange, they got major label muscle, bigger budgets, wider reach, and a partner who could put Jay-Z's next album in stores nationwide, not just wherever Dash could drive. In 1999, the founders used the platform to launch Roc-A-Wear. It wasn't a licensing deal or celebrity endorsement. It was an extension of the same principle that started the whole thing.
This is a Jay-Z meat riding situation. This is not a this ain't no goddamn Dame Dash rabbit hole. What the fuck is happening? My computer just be doing what it want to do, bro. As soon as I start streaming for y'all, everything don't want to work no more. You got my hat? Where's that? Sitting there with them kids.
Take me back when you were growing up in Harlem in the 80s. Because it seemed like what you guys really did was built around that.
Yeah. I mean, the 80s was about, dudes being thorough, the music, the hip hop, the scene, a lifestyle, right? And it's funny because I'm wearing Pumas right now, so, something that we used to rock heavy back then. But back then, man, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of danger as well, especially being outside in the 80s. But it was a good time for music. It was a good time for everything. It was a lot of love. It seemed like a lot of people got away from things as the years went by, but it was a great time.
Like, I interviewed AZ Faisan.
Harlem was Harlem, man, It was fun. We grew up in the sugar hill.
And you're younger than him, but no, absolutely. Like, at what point did you start getting mixed up in the street life? Absolutely. Now, how did you end up hooking up with Dame and then later on with Jay?
Dame I met when I was 14. And he was a part of a crew called The Best Out that my brother was a part of, and I actually became a part of afterwards. But I met Dame, and we used to throw parties all around Harlem. So Dame had kind of left Harlem for a second to get in the music game, and he started managing Future Sound and then Original Flavor. And when he got them signed to Clark Kent told him that he had a guy that he wanted him to meet because he was in the streets, and he thought that Dame would be the perfect person to manage him because he had a take no attitude. So introduced them. They were friends for about a year or so or two.
A take no attitude. What does that mean? A take no attitude? I think I know what he was trying to say, right? What was he trying to say, Jay? Like the attitude of I won't take no for an answer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's persistent, and he don't take no for an he don't take no for an answer, basically. Why he say a take no attitude? I hate these headphones just twisting up. Like, what is it? Why is it doing? Why? Because then if I untwist it, right, what's gonna happen is nothing. Untwist it, untwist it, untwist it. Right? Plug it in, normal. It don't move from here. It don't even twist over here. But somehow it ends up tangled again. Fucking hate the headphones, bro. They so good. I love these headphones. But they fucking scare me, man. I'm so scared that I'm gonna break them.
2 years before I met him.
Okay, and when you first heard Jay's music, you didn't really like it?
Nah, I wasn't a fan.
Okay. Now, what was the song that you heard when you were like...
You heard this shit, yeah? What did you listen to? You was listening to this?
Slacking in the game, kid, make it happen. Cop some cracks and put yourself back on the map. And once your clientele's proven without you, love is moving. You got that shit they want, need, gotta have when they use it. The shit is deeper than the streets, we working for the government. Before they try to Larry Davis me, we go in public. Can't see my future from the streets, so I live for now. Gotta get legit before they hear my name too much downtown. I'm trying to be about this shit, but soon as I start packing, every time I try to leave this game, they pull me back in.
So he was selling drugs right here. Why he look like a child? Look how old he looks. He looks like he eating graham crackers and animal crackers and shit. Still eating applesauce.
Bag into selling small white fragments. Big bags are big cause I never had shit. I gotta get mine regardless. Even
what Big said?
Okay. Now, what was the song that you heard when you were like, wait a minute? Okay. Now, what was the song that you heard when you first heard Jay's music, you didn't really like it?
Nah, I wasn't a fan.
Okay. Now, what was the song that you heard when you were like, wait a minute, I got to reconsider
Well,
this stance?
the time when I thought that Jay was serious, it was a few songs though. It was 95 South, Got to Reach the Top, some.
We arrived on the brothers beating as well. We were about to be rich, it ain't hard to tell. Set up shop with no delay. 4.5 ounces, a big 8, yeah, done in a day. Called up my girl, told her what I was doing. Sit tight, I'm sending you 4,500 to Western Union. Beat my connect, here's what I said best. If anything happens to Hun, buy a head vest. They hooked up, cooked up, cool. Man, you gotta love it when
I see why.
goes.
He fixed that shit, didn't he? He fixed that shit, chat. Hey, he fixed that shit. Hey, he fixed it. Hold up. One more time. That shit sound like it crank right now. I want that motherfucker. I want whatever life he was living. Right when he made that. It's a goal in my life to reach that point. Come on now.
She was thorough, left a rebel, it was like that. Maybe gave me my shit, see you when I get back.
Well, let's talk about you. Do you feel like you get your props as a mogul, man?
I don't care. I take my props.
Word.
Give a fuck about props. I can't. Yeah, I do get my props. I'm not a mogul. I'm a tycoon. I sell oil. Don't disrespect me and say I do everything everybody else does. And I put up my own money. All these so-called moguls y'all talking about, you name one of them that put their own dough up. A boss, you're only the boss if you put up your own money. If you don't put up your own money, I don't care how much somebody gives you, you're nothing but a supervisor. It's not yours. So how much money can you get paid to not? There's no money in this world for someone to pay me so they could call me, so I could call them a boss. That's like calling somebody daddy. How can a man call another man, yo, that's my boss? We don't do that.
I mean, everybody at some point has to have a boss, right?
No, not in Harlem. Oh, okay. Put it like this.
Because you're somebody's boss.
No, I'm not somebody's boss. I'm. When I was in the street.
No, I'm not. But I'm a boss. He said he's a boss, but he said I'm not somebody's boss. I know what he's saying, but I don't. He's Charlamagne trying to get him right there.
Somebody daddy. How can a man call another man, yo, that's my boss? We don't do that.
Boss.
I mean, everybody has some
props. I can't. Yeah, I do get my props. I'm not a mogul.
But you, do you feel like you get your props as a mogul, man?
I don't care.
He's a mogul, a tycoon.
I take my props.
Word.
Give a fuck about props. I can't. Yeah, I do get my props. I'm not a mogul. I'm a tycoon. I sell oil. Don't disrespect me and say I do everything everybody else does. And I put up my own money. All these so-called moguls y'all talking about, you name one of them that put their own dough up. A boss, you're only the boss if you put up your own money.
You're right,
if you
though.
don't put up your own money, I don't care how much somebody gives you, you're nothing but a supervisor. It's not yours.
He's right.
So how much money can you get paid to not? There's no money in this world for someone to pay me so they could call me, so I could call them a boss. That's like calling somebody daddy. How can a man call another man, yo, that's my boss?
Yo, all the jobs I had in my whole life, I ain't never referred to my supervisor or anybody above me as my motherfucking boss. I never even told nobody else that I had a boss. I would never say that. That's not even how I think about it. I don't even respect the people that have the authority. I don't respect them enough to call them that. I'm using them. This is mine. This is my system. I'm working this for me. This is a finesse. You know what I'm saying? I refuse to even see it like it would be in the mind frame of comfort being fed like that. Like, you know.
We don't do that.
I mean, everybody at some point has to have a boss, right?
No, not in Harlem. Oh, okay. Put it like this.
Because you're somebody's boss.
No, I'm not somebody's boss.
At some point.
When I was in the street, someone wasn't your boss. They gave you an opportunity.
Okay.
They gave you some work. You go make it, and then you bring it back. You can go buy your own work. You do whatever you want. It's called consignment.
So why this can't be all work? This corporate America, we could be using
you don't
this.
own it.
But I'm
telling you. No, I'm telling you why. I'm telling you why. Question. Let me answer your question.
I'm listening.
Can you give it to your son?
Can I give what to my son?
Whatever you
Shares in this company, I absolutely positively can.
Share to this company.
How? Because
that ain't what he's saying. Can you give this show to your son? You know you can't.
Yeah, I absolutely positively
ain't
can.
yours.
How?
How? Because I own shares of this company.
You bought them?
Yes.
What I'm saying is, can your son eat? Is this yours to give the whole company
This
to
full
you?
company is
I'm
not
asking,
my son's. No,
exactly.
It's not mine. But
Can,
I own
wait,
shares in
stop.
the company.
Listen.
I'm
That's not my
listening.
question. If your son needs a job here, can you give it to him? No.
No.
If your son needs to get some money out the bank from here, some cash flow, can he get it?
No.
All right, you don't own this.
But I can take
Stop.
the, I
I'm
can
just
take the
telling
money
you.
from here and invest in
No,
myself.
it's not yours. I'm not gonna fight for something I don't own. Men don't do that. I don't fight for other niggas. I fight for me. I'm not a doula.
I'm not a
I'm
doula.
not gonna build somebody else's company and then pick shares so my son can all that.
See, but I'm not
no,
fighting for
listen,
this company.
listen.
I said,
What I'm saying.
not a doula. I'm not a mother.
What about taking the money?
You come
like
to
the same
work
way you
every
took the
day.
money from Def Jam?
I didn't take. Wait, stop! Don't say you're speaking my business and you don't know what you're talking about. I ain't take no money from Def Jam. What you talking
When I mean
about?
take, I mean they cut you a
No,
check.
they didn't cut me a check. We had a formula based on performance, and they calculated, and we got paid.
That's
and they
us.
stop. That's not us.
That's not us. We not in the same.
Now it needed infrastructure. A traditional record without hit shelves. The tapes, it was the first time the business had access to national pipeline instead of a backseat of a Lexus. It wasn't limiting its reach. They didn't need someone to discover Jay-Z anymore. They needed someone special. Depending on which account you read, it was either 1994, 95, or 96. What's not disputed is what it was named. Roc-A-Fella, a deliberate echo of Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest family names in American history, borrowed by three men from Brooklyn and Harlem with no capital, no distributor, and no guarantee the name would outlast the first pressing run. It wasn't a joke, it was a thesis statement, the kind of audacity that only makes sense in retrospect, once it works. The trunk sales had proven something the labels hadn't believed. There was demand. What they didn't have was the infrastructure to meet it at scale, pressing plants, retail relationships beyond what they could work by hand. A way to get product into stores that weren't mom and pop. So they went looking for a distributor, not a label willing to.
Hold on. What brought them together though?
And anyone with a foothold in a market the major labels weren't watching closely enough to notice someone else moving in. Biggs Burke kept the operation moving, the inventory, the numbers, the unglamorous math of how many units moved and where, and Jay-Z was the product and the
I'm trying to figure out what made Biggs so willing to work on this dream of Roc-A-Fella if he didn't like Jay-Z's music at first. What how did they come together? And who was he's Dame's friend? Like, how did this come together? This nigga ain't doing his due diligence. I'm trying to do some sort of understand. I just want to understand how this shit came together.
pitch, behind the wheel as often as he was behind the mic. This wasn't a metaphor for hustle, it was the actual business model. Every sale did more than move another tape. It financed the next batch, press the tapes, load the trunk, drive to wherever buyers were, blast their music as loud as they could, and sell the tapes one at a time. The industry had a term for what labels tried to do with new artists: break them. Nobody was going to break Jay-Z into anything, so the three of them built the market out themselves, one trunk, one street corner, one open car door at a time. By the time major labels started paying attention, there were already sales figures they couldn't.
Clark Kent knew Jay-Z was from the Brooklyn scene. Clark was tight with Biggie. Clark Kent knew Dame Dash, who was up in Harlem throwing parties, managing a rap group called Original Flavor. So Dame had his own shit going on. He was managing a rap group and throwing parties. I'm sure there was a lot of relationships and famous people at these parties. Clark kept telling Dame, I have a rapper in Brooklyn. So he finally agreed to meet Jay-Z. Heard him rap, and he liked it. Before Roc-A-Fella, Jay-Z was fast rapping, tongue twisting. I like how AI be like, he fast rapping, tongue twisted. Dame convinced Jay to slow down his flow and talk like a mafioso. We gotta stop shitting on Dame like Dame ain't do nothing. Who the fuck was Jay-Z before Dame, though? Who the fuck was Jay-Z before Dame?
ignore. Numbers moving unit by unit outside the system that was supposed to decide which record succeeded. 3 names, 1 company, no consensus on the exact date it became official. Depending on which account you read, it was either 1994, 95, or 96. What's not
Dame sales pitched of the exit straight. Biggs was looking for a legitimate way to clean his money and get out of the streets before he ended up dead or in jail. Oh, so that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm like, every time we doing these hip-hop history path rabbit holes, it be just niggas in pictures with niggas. And I be trying to figure out, how did you get here and why do you have this opportunity? Why are you a part of this? And it be because I'm a criminal and I got the money. I'm a criminal, I have the drug money, or I'm a criminal and I am the one that's keeping you safe. I'm the one that's keeping the thieves, the haters, the niggas, the ops, I'm keeping them from killing you. That be why they always there. It's never, oh, he rap too. Oh, he got an ear for music. You know, he loved the music so much. He just a passionate. He believe in the dream. Damn. Where's the hope for up-and-coming artists? You better get involved with the streets. That's what it sounds like.
disputed is what it was named, Roc-A-Fella, a deliberate echo of Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest family names in American history. Borrowed by 3 men from Brooklyn and Harlem with no capital, no distributor, and no guarantee the name would outlast the first pressing run. It wasn't a joke, it was a thesis statement, the kind of audacity that only makes sense in retrospect once it works. The trunk sales had proven something the labels hadn't believed. There was demand. What they didn't have was the infrastructure to meet it at scale, pressing plants, retail relationships beyond what they could work by hand, a way to get product into stores that weren't mom and pop. So they went looking for a distributor, not a label willing to sign them. The difference mattered more than it sounds. Most artists spent years trying to get signed. Roc-A-Fella was trying to stay unsigned for as long as they could without limiting its reach. They didn't need someone to discover Jay-Z anymore. They needed someone to move boxes. That was an unusual position for an unsigned rap act. Most artists need a label to create demand. Roc-A-Fella had already created demand. Now it needed infrastructure. A traditional record deal would have meant giving up ownership or long-term control of the masters, the actual asset, in exchange for someone else fronting the money. For Roc-A-Fella, a distribution deal meant someone else handled getting the records into stores while the company kept its independence and its masters. It wasn't complete independence. Distribution still meant relying on someone else's network, but it preserved the one thing Dash, Burke, and Carter increasingly understood was worth protecting: ownership. Priority Records agreed to distribute Reasonable Doubt. For a company that had started with a trunk full of tapes, it was the first time the business had access to National Pipeline instead of a backseat of a Lexus. It wasn't a random bet. Priority had built a reputation that decade working with independent rap labels, and would.
Who owned Priority Records? Who owned Priority Records? And what made them fuck with them?
Soon become known for another landmark partnership with Master P's No Limit Records. Roc-A-Fella wasn't the only outsider betting that distribution deal meant someone else handled getting the records into stores while the company kept its independence and its masters. It wasn't complete independence. Distribution still.
It's a Canadian-American businessman, Brian Turner, along with his partners Mark Cerami, Steve Drath. So Priority Records was the biggest independent label in the country, and they specifically built their legacy by backing rebellious, unapologetic hip-hop movements. So they were the same label that gave Eazy-E, Ruthless Records their distribution deal to drop NWA. Wow. They also backed Houston's Rap-A-Lot Records, and Geffen Records dropped the Ghetto Boys for having explicit graphic content. So when Geffen dropped the Ghetto Boys and basically fired them niggas for being explicit and graphic, they gave them a distribution deal. So they believe in niggas, man.
Meant relying on someone else's network, but it preserved the
Might
one thing
have to holler at you, Priority Records. Keep that in mind, huh?
Carter increasingly understood was worth protecting: ownership. Priority Records agreed to distribute Reasonable Doubt. For a company that had started with a trunk full of tapes, it was the first time the business had access to National Pipeline instead of a backseat of a Lexus. It wasn't a random bet. Priority had built a reputation that decade working with independent rap labels, and would soon become known for another landmark partnership with Master P's No Limit Records. Roc-A-Fella wasn't the only outsider betting that ownership was worth more than an advance. It was one of several proving the model could work. June 25th, 1996, Reasonable Doubt hit shelves. The album 3 Men Had Bet a Company's existence on. It sold roughly 43,000, a random bet. Priority had built a reputation that decade working with independent rap labels, and would soon become known for another landmark partnership with Master P's No Limit Records. Roc-A-Fella wasn't the only outsider betting.
Look at that. Y'all like that? I'm not hating on it. I just people take time, man. Swag is built. Swag is built.
That ownership was worth more than an advance. It was one of several proving the model could work. June 25th, 1996, Reasonable Doubt hit shelves. The album 3 Men Had Bet a Company's existence on. It sold roughly 43,000 copies in its first week, enough to land at number 23 on the Billboard 200. Not enough to make anyone in the industry stop what they were doing. Context matters here. That same year, Tupac's All Eyes on Me sold more than 500,000 copies in its first week. Jay-Z's debut would take years to reach platinum. It wouldn't be certified platinum until 2000.
I'm about to walk my dog, y'all. We'll be back YouTube. Y'all niggas gonna have to wait. So I'm not trying to walk him in the dark. And it's raining. It just stopped. Gotta walk this nigga. Why we pausing with Dame looking like this?